Good evening and welcome to the June 25th, 2024 meeting of the Abington Board of School Directors. I note the attendance of all board members with the exception of Mr. Allen, who is excused, and I note that Ms. Hartman is joining us virtually. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. The Abington Board of School Directors has convened this evening's meeting at the Administration Building, and the public is welcome. In consideration of the health and safety of the school community, this meeting is also being broadcast live on the Abington School District YouTube channel. This meeting is being recorded and will be accessible on the district's website and cable channel no later than Friday, June 28, 2024, to allow those members of the public who cannot participate to view the proceeding at a later time. Comments from citizens will be conducted in person and by phone. Information regarding participating remotely in public comment will be displayed on the screen at the time of public comment, and the board thanks the public in advance for its cooperation. This is truly a place where we value both your voice and your presence. You are welcome in this space, and we hold dignity in high regard. The board did meet in an executive session today regarding litigation. Do we have any additional security, pardon me, regarding security for the executive session? Do we have any additional announcements or additional agenda items this evening? Okay. Anything to be brought about from my fellow board members in regard to agenda items this evening? We will open up with comments from the board. Ms. Frazier?
Welcome, everyone.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Good evening.
Dr. Mowry?
Welcome, everyone.
Ms. Spalding?
Nothing at this time.
Mr. Muhammad?
Good evening.
Ms. Fazy?
Good evening, everyone.
Ms. Hartman?
Good evening, everyone.
Dr. Fetcher?
Good evening.
Thank you. We can begin with this evening's honors.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. I'm going to ask that Dr. James Etlin, principal of Highland Elementary School, come forward to honor Ms. Dottie Kalkbrenner, an Abington Township crossing guard who served the students of Highland School for over 47 years.
Good evening, Ms. Brown, Dr. Fetcher, and members of the board. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Ms. Dorothy Kalkbrenner. If you want to join me at the lectern, please. Affectionately known as Ms. Dottie, Ms. Dottie has been a crossing guard in Abington Township for 47 years, many of which have been spent serving the students of Highland Elementary. She has dedicated her career to serving our community students, always being a warm and friendly presence, either in the good mornings that she would give to students as she crossed them on their way to school, or in the goodbyes as students would cross on their way home each day. Keeping the students safe is not something that Ms. Dottie takes lightly. I know this firsthand as I have witnessed countless times when Ms. Dottie has chastised drivers who would block the entrance of our parent pickup line. We certainly are going to miss Ms. Dottie, and we wish her all the best as she begins her retirement and the next chapter of her life. On June 7th, the students and staff at Highland celebrated Ms. Dottie and honored her service to the community. 6ABC featured Ms. Dottie to recognize this remarkable milestone. The story went viral and was featured on Good Morning America and the America Strong segment on World News Tonight. So Ms. Dottie, you've become a national celebrity. Here's a clip from 6ABC's Action News, which originally aired the story.
Finally, at 4 years today, generations of students have Miss Dottie to thank for helping them safely cross the road in Abington Township.
Action News community journalist Mateo Iadanese captured a special day during her final week on the job.
Okay, have a good day.
You too.
I love to course the kids. Have a good day, girls. The kids are all good, and that's part of me. Yeah, you're welcome. Have a good day. It kind of makes you almost cry because, you know, you won't get to see them again. I'm going to miss you guys. I really will.
I'm gonna retire.
Okay. I've been a crossing guard. Altogether is 47 years. Good morning. Have a good day. It's important to keep the children safe so they can get across the street and not be on their own.
Thank you, Miss Dottie.
All right. You know, I'm getting to the point that I'm 89 years old and it's time for me to retire and take part in where I live.
Introducing Miss Dottie.
I never expected it. I just appreciated so much that Highland School did this to me. It was just overwhelming. Thank you. Do I get a hug? Such a full auditorium with all the kids. It was amazing. And I'm going to miss you too. I see so many of the kids that I cross. Okay, take care. It's hard to believe. I enjoyed it so much, and I know I'm going to miss it. I'll miss all the kids. But please do what you're supposed to do when you cross the street. Take care and goodbye.
Oh, she's special. That was Mateo Iadanisi report.
So, Ms. Brown, Dr. Fetcher, if you would mind joining me to present this certificate to Ms. Dottie. So it says, congratulations, the Abington School District proudly recognizes Dorothy Kalkbrenner, Abington Township Crossing Guard at Highland Elementary School, 47 years of service. Congratulations.
Thank you.
Yes. Beautiful. Delightful. Please. Yes, 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 yes. You could have gotten some advice for longevity. Yes. That's beautiful. Can I just add something a little personal before Miss Dottie leaves? If I can catch her. So you may not remember, but throughout my kids' time at Highland, you crossed both of them. So I guess that would be about 8 years. And they remember you incredibly fondly. My daughter's now in law school, and my son is finishing up his undergraduate degree. And you were such an important part of our mornings. Not just keeping the kids safe, walking across Edge Hill, which is a crazy busy road, especially early in the morning, but the way you started their day with a good morning meant a lot. It's really a model of civic interaction. And so I thank you very much from my family, especially to you, for your years of service.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I've crossed so many kids that come back from high school, junior high, college, and even some that are married.
It's great.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh,
Continue.
yes, please.
All right. I'm going to ask Ms. Artur, our communications coordinator, to come forward to share a video highlighting recent media coverage of Abington School District.
Good evening, Dr. Fetcher, Mrs. Brown, and board members. That's a tough act to follow. But earlier this month, we were proud to congratulate the nearly 700 members of the class of 2024 as they celebrated their commencement with the annual grad walk tradition when the seniors returned to their old elementary schools for a final procession through the halls. CBS 3 Philadelphia aired a story about the students who returned to Overlook Elementary School the day before graduation, and I'm pleased to share this clip with you this evening.
Well, local graduating high school seniors took a stroll down memory lane today. They visited their old elementary school to say goodbye.
But they also encouraged younger students to be excited about high school. CBS News Philadelphia and Montgomery County reporter Kim Hudson has this story from Abington.
Before these students from Abington Senior High School crossed the stage, they walked the hallway one more time at Overlook Elementary School. Tuesday, the soon-to-be graduates took what they call the grad walk. They got rock star treatment from 3rd, 4th, and 5th graders. Abington senior Sierra Henderson says the goal of this annual event is to give younger students something to look forward to as they get ready for middle, then high school.
For little kids, it's kind of a good, way to just be excited for the future as to what you're gonna be able to see in high school and just kind of the end goal from where you are now.
Abington senior Connor Pendergast says the walk was also sentimental for him since he and his classmates also went to Overlook.
It's just a real feeling because I remember being that little kid cheering for those seniors graduating, and it's a crazy full circle moment.
That is why Overlook principal Karima Boyd says this tradition going for more than a decade is always bittersweet.
It is very emotional because they remember coming to elementary school. They get to see their teachers.
But this visit was exciting for 5th grader Aubrey Spence.
I have been here since kindergarten, and I've seen this every year, and it's been building up my confidence.
And Principal Boyd says as these seniors get ready to spread their wings, they are welcome to come visit anytime.
Once an Overlook Owl, they are always going to be an Overlook Owl, and we are so very proud.
This was a special day, not only for the high school students who graduate Wednesday night, it was also memorable for the 5th graders who have their own graduation ceremony next Tuesday afternoon. In Abington, Kim Hudson, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Thank you.
Thank you. Exciting and a tradition that continues, and it truly, having the opportunity to witness it, truly inspires our students to aim high and beyond graduation as well. So I'm glad to see that was organized, and I just want to take a moment to thank. I know that it's a logistically something that needs to be put into place, and the staff at Abington Senior High School who spend much time making sure that it happens every year and it happens in the right way and coordinate with our elementary principals. So I would just want to take a moment to thank them for that because I do treasure watching that.
I agree. It is not something that every school district does, and it's something that I value tremendously here. Dr. Fetcher, please proceed with this evening's orientation.
Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Brown. As we are recipients of ARP Esther's grant funding, our plan is due for review. As the last time it was reviewed was on January 23rd, 2024, I'm going to ask Dr. Rosenthal to review that there are no changes.
That's correct. That's correct. The health and safety plan is the same, and this should be the last time we need a review.
Thank you. Any questions or comments about the health and safety plan? Okay. Dr. Fetcher, please proceed.
Okay. Tonight, I'm going to ask that Ms. Laura Nama, Assistant Director of Secondary Teaching and Learning, and Mr. James Lodwick, Supervisor of Teaching and Learning, to share the proposed grades 6 to 12 additions and modifications to the Abington School District academic program.
Good evening, Ms. Brown, Dr. Fetcher, and the Board of School Directors. The purpose of this orientation is to provide a brief explanation for recommended changes to the 2024-2025 program of studies at the secondary level. After carefully analyzing the progress of students in the subject of English language arts over the 2023-24 school year, the Teaching and Learning Department, in collaboration with the middle and senior high school administrations, are recommending 6 course additions and modifications. Abington Middle School is recommending that 3 courses be added to the program of study. These courses are Reading 6, Reading 7, and Reading 8. Each course will be designed to help students improve their basic reading skills. Students will be recommended for these courses based on multiple measures, including their reading and PSSA performance levels. These additions will provide an increase in instructional minutes in English language arts for a targeted population of students by 63 hours. Abington Middle School is also proposing modifying one of our courses, Pathway to Success. This is a required course for all 6th grade students that meets every other day for the year. The course curriculum would be modified, if approved, to include the development of critical reading skills with the support of a reading specialist for 1 period per week. This modification would increase the overall instructional minutes in English language arts in grade 6 by 25 hours. Abington Senior High School is proposing adding 2 reading courses, Reading 9 and Reading 10. In a similar fashion to the courses being proposed at Abington Middle School, these courses will be designed to help identified students improve their basic reading skills. These additions will increase instructional minutes for targeted populations of senior high school students by 61 hours. At this time, Mr. Lodwick is going to share how these courses can augment our current program to help all students succeed in English language arts.
Good evening. Students who struggle with reading experience these issues due to the fact that they may need specific interventions in the areas of phonics, phonemic awareness, fluency, vocabulary, and comprehension. These essential skills are necessary for reading proficiency and require direct, systematic, and explicit instruction. With the integration of these new classes and modifications to the Pathways course, students will receive additional instruction to support their learning needs in reading. English language arts teachers will continue their instruction that builds knowledge, expands vocabulary, develops critical thinking skills, and encourages the love of reading. Further, English language arts teachers will collaborate with reading specialists to strategically support all students during the core ELA instruction and when or what I need time.
At this time, we can answer any questions.
Hopefully.
Thank you. The mics are open.
I have a question. Can you just sort of briefly describe how this differs from the way the middle school in particular was handling reading, say, last year or the year before?
Like prior to the reconfiguration or since we've reconfigured?
Since we've reconfigured.
So how this is doing what?
So how does this proposal differ from what was being done last year and the year before?
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. So, well, currently we are not offering any reading classes for a targeted population of students outside of students who have potentially an individual education plan that calls for it.
Mhm.
So any students without an IEP are not receiving any targeted instruction outside of the ELA block. So we do have students who receive some interventions and, targeted instruction during WIN, but this would be on top of WIN. And so the 3 courses that we're talking about adding would really be, very intensive instruction for students we've identified have specific needs. And so it will be very much specialized towards their needs and will be taught by reading specialists. The Pathway to Success class being modified is adding additional minutes for all students in ELA. So whereas reading 6, 7, and 8 is just for a targeted group of students who need intervention, Pathway to Success is going to be for all 6th grade students, so that all 6th grade students have additional time in essentially reading. I mean, that will focus specifically on reading instruction and hopefully getting the students more access to, text and the skills that they need to be successful.
Okay, so if I remember correctly, when we did the grade span reconfiguration, there was a significant drop in the amount of time that students were exposed either to reading or ELA instruction. So how much of that does this restore?
Hold on, let me look. I think I brought what the minutes were before. So this restores When we reconfigured, I'll just share all the hours, because the way that the ELA block worked in grade 6 in the elementary schools, the students lost about 81 hours of instruction over the course of the year in 6th grade.
Okay.
Now, when we did that, we increased instruction in 7th and 8th grade. We added 66 hours to both those grades. So there was a net gain over 3 years. But the purpose of adding minutes to the pathway class, which is around 25 hours, is to add back some of that 81 that was taken away. But it does not make up the whole 81.
Okay, so we're still roughly 55 hours shy annually of what kids were getting beforehand.
What they were, yes, when
In
they were
6th grade,
in
okay.
6th grade, yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Does the targeted population include any student that scores basic on the PSSA?
So the PSSA will only be one of the measures that's going to be used to determine which students are going to receive this instructional course. The recommendations for each grade are looking at the PSSA scores. When we have reading scores, we are using those as well, which we do have for many of our students that we test with something called Acadians or Dibbles. You may have heard that before. And then we're also taking recommendations from our reading specialists, because our reading specialists do work with students currently in grade 5 at the elementary school, and then with students currently in grade 6 and 7 in WIN, well, and 8 in WIN. And so they've also helped, they're going to help us identify the students.
So in terms of, just for clarification, in terms of minutes lost, and how much time, if you are a 6th grader who is in need of additional reading intervention, and you're in reading 6, plus you're in the pathways, how much time does that make up for our, readers who are struggling more?
So the Reading 6 course would add 63 hours, and then Pathways would add 25. So that would get us to 88. So it would be above what those students were getting when they were in 6th grade.
So for that particular population,
They would actually have more minutes than they had when they were in 6th grade.
we're closer, okay.
Mhm.
But
Only
in
that
terms
targeted
of,
group.
in terms of students who are not identified, we're still shy, the amount of
grade
time they
6.
had as 6th graders.
So, but in 6th grade, if they were struggling before the grade reconfiguration, presumably they would have had additional time. So the 80 hours you
So-
said was originally, right?
Well, the
Be
way
during the
that,
block.
and I
Yeah.
don't know if Dr. Viola or someone else should answer this, but I believe that the way that the reading specialists work with students at the elementary is through WIN, which is part of the ELA block. Yeah, so it is inclusive of that time. It's not in addition to, it's within the ELA block at the elementary level.
Okay. But I thought we were talking about before and after the grade reconfiguration, right? And WIN was added after?
So elementary actually was doing WIN before the reconfiguration.
Okay.
But the middle school added WIN during the reconfiguration. So that was new to that middle school when we reconfigured.
Okay.
In regards to this targeted population, how many sections of these courses do you plan on adding? So if you could speak to the need, and then like what's the criteria, if you could just give more detail in terms of, who's going to be serviced, how many students are going to be serviced versus who actually needs it.
So with, we haven't gone through everything yet because we were looking for board approval before we move forward. I have to be honest about all of it. As I mentioned, we have already spoken to I didn't mention this, but we have already spoken to our reading specialists and asked them to identify students. And we have obviously data on students in terms of reading levels and in terms of PSSA scores and things like that, and grades, and how they did on unit exams and different things like that. So that is overall the criteria that they're using to, and really the reading specialists, along with Janine Sack, who wasn't able to be here tonight, are really leading that effort to identify the specific students. our current thinking, if these courses were recommended at the middle school, were to offer 4 sections of each grade level next year. So 4 sections of Reading 6, 4 of Reading 7, and 4 of Reading 8. These would be classes that have a relatively small class size. So that is most likely 60 to 80 students that we would be identifying in each grade. Sorry, go ahead.
I just want to speak to that as well. As you imagine, this is our last board meeting of our season, and it's probably one of the few times I've ever seen a course at this late in the year. And I want to explain that, especially, one, to the board, but also to our parents. We noticed that there are drops in performance of our students, and as more information came in as the year went on, thought that, I thought it was imperative that we do something or take some action step rather than more of the same going in the next school year. So it's unconventional for us at this point to present recommended course changes. However, I believe that we need to do something, and we need to do it now and not wait another year. Part of doing that is to have the courses approved, and the process will take place throughout the summer. That will include phone calls to parents of students who may be identified to say, we'd really recommend that your child be part of this course. And it's going to take a lot of time and individual attention. And so this evening, we can't say it's going to look exactly like this, but we know that we have our reading specialists on board. We know that we're going to have the opportunity to add in these courses if approved, and address a population of students who may be struggling with multiple factors. And part of what we're also looking to do is add some type of reading inventory across the school in order to look at Lexiles for our students, to help with not only just in English language arts, but also in subjects like science and social studies and nonfiction texts to help our students, for all of our students. Yep. So this process, in terms of answering the exact numbers, the direct answer to that question is we don't know at this time because it's evolving. And I recommend to the board to approve this evening because I think it is a step in the right direction for us to address a significant need and a decline that quite simply, and all the team will tell you that they have heard from me, we cannot just sit and watch this happen. We need to step in, we need to do something about it, and we need to analyze our current practices, look at our data, and look at areas where we can improve. But I think I appreciate taking a moment to just explain that because it is unconventional, but we need to do something.
Mm-hmm. I applaud the need to do something. Here are some questions that I have. What supplemental materials are needed to identify the need to individualize interventions and to monitor growth over time, especially in light of us possibly losing some of the resources that are now being funded through ESSER funds that will no longer be funded after next year. So if we can set a goal, we identified who, or we're in the process of identifying who, what is the goal that we're trying to reach with them, and then work backwards so that we can monitor that progress over time. And if things aren't working, what's our plan to pivot? So those are some of the things that I'm interested in receiving.
So I can say, and like I said, Janine Sack wasn't able to be here tonight, but she's currently looking at our supplemental resources that we do use for intervention. and explicit instruction, and she's looking at the gaps that we're seeing in student learning. And if we plan on adopting any new materials, we would bring those forward to you before the start of the school year in August. And as Dr. Fetcher mentioned, we are looking also at potentially another type of tool to be able to gauge our students' Lexile levels to help us with differentiation and also, making sure we're meeting the needs of all students. So we are analyzing what we've been doing, and if there's a need for anything new, we have our reading specialists looking into things and having those discussions over the summer, and we would bring them to you.
And to answer that too, in terms of we're not just looking at student achievement scores, we're looking at growth. Dr. Butts and I were fortunate to speak with someone from PDE in terms of PVOS growth and looking at students dialing it down to say what interventions. So if a student has received X intervention, have they had growth over the year? And I think we need to do that and dial down with various interventions or programs that we're using to be able to see, are they growing with this program from the start of the year to the end of the year? Is there value in that program? And as we did with most of our ESSER-funded programs, are these worth continuing even though we're not going to have the funding to do that? Or is there something that needs to go and this replaces what needs to go?
Mm-hmm. And I believe part of our MTSS model is also taking into consideration if the student is actually here to receive those services to make sure that it's being carried out with fidelity. It's hard to measure growth if the student isn't receiving the services, so I hope that would be a part of the report as well. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Okay. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Dr. Fetcher, please proceed.
Okay. I'm going to ask Mr. Vittoria to present the final general fund budget for the 2024-2025 school year, which include revenue, expenses, and contingency budgets of $199,557,496. Mr. Vittoria.
Thank you. So tonight we will review the changes to the 24-25 general fund budget since the May 28th board meeting. We will review the impact on homeowners and seniors who qualify for the rebate program. And finally, we will provide an ending forecast for the 23-24 budget. So this is the data that was used to build the 24-25 general fund budget. All information has been incorporated into the budget except the state allocation of basic ed and special ed funding. The state budget has not yet been approved, so we're using what the governor has proposed. So this is a historical information that shows on the left side the millage rate from 2004-2005 through 23-24, shows actual revenue and expenses, accumulated and use of fund balance. And on the far right side, it shows the enrollment history, which shows a growth of 1,300 students since 2004-2005 school year. A board member had asked about the impact of the school district's finances not raising taxes in these years here, 2011, 2012, through 13, 14, and again in 18, 19 to 2021. If we had raised taxes at 2%, and then at the index for these years here, we would be beginning the 23-24 school year with an estimated fund balance of $58.7 million instead of $27.3 million. This would be $31 million that could have been used for capital projects. This slide shows the impact on the increased PSERS contribution that the school district has been making. In 2009, 2010, the school district was contributing $2.7 million to PSERS. In the 23-24 school year, it is estimated that the school district will contribute $16.3 million. PSERS is estimating increases through 27-28, which would increase our contribution to $19.5 million. So this slide was presented to the board on May 28th, which showed local revenue increasing $7 million to $138.6 million. State revenue increasing $4.4 million to $47 million. Federal revenue is decreasing $1 million to $2.9 million, which is due to the ending of the ESSERS funds. Fund balance usage is at $6.8 million, and total revenue is at $195.4 million. Expenses are $98.7 million for salaries, $17.1 million for negotiated benefits, $42 million for mandated benefits, $37.4 million for non-salary, non-benefits. Total expense at $195.4 million with an ending fund balance of $8.6 million. Since the May 28th board meeting, we have been provided information which indicates a $440,000 decrease in real estate taxes generated by 37.07 mills because the Montgomery County Board of Assessment provided decreased real estate assessment figures for Abington Township and the Borough of Rockledge. Other revenue is increasing $2.7 million to reflect additional IDA funds that are being passed through the MCIU. Federal revenue is decreasing $13,000, which is a decrease in allocation of title funds. Federal revenues include $687,000 of ESSERS carryover fund from 23-24 to 24-25, and this is the final amount of our ESSERS funds, which will be dedicated to curriculum resources for students. Expenses have increased $2.1 million since the May 28th meeting to $197.6 million. Salaries have decreased $2.4 million, and mandated benefits have decreased $1.2 million. The decrease is due to the contract with ESS for the substitute teacher service. The decrease in salaries and benefits was shifted to non-salary, non-benefit lines to pay for the ESS service. Also included in the increase in non-salary and non-benefit line is $1.3 million needed for increase in special ed needs and funding of Brandywine Virtual Academy, which is the district's virtual learning ACE program. Negotiated benefits are increasing just over $1 million compared to our budget on May 28th. At the June 11th meeting of CPAS, which is the district's self-funded medical insurance consortium for employees, it was reported that healthcare costs paid on behalf of our employees exceeded monthly payments that the district has made to CPAS. This is creating a shortfall in the Abington funds in the consortium. This trend is a combination of healthcare cost inflation and increased utilization of the benefits by our employees. The additional $1 million is needed to pay the monthly premiums, as well as to add to our fund balance within the consortium that requires 2 months expenditures and requires 2 months of expenditures in accordance with their bylaws. Please note that we have $1.9 million in other financing uses contingency. This includes an additional $1 million for potential healthcare needs in the 24-25 school year. And at the end of May, PDE had released the remaining subsidies for school districts. Our payment included $3.2 million of our state basic education subsidy, as well as a $1.4 million deduction for the MCIU transportation recovery. Intermediate units are the transportation providers of last resort for the school districts when school districts do not have the capacity to transport additional transportation requirements for students. Since COVID-19, PDE has been short paying intermediate units for transportation services provided undercharging school districts on an annual basis. With this May 24 subsidy payment, PDE began a statewide catch-up payment process to the IUs to alleviate the IU's negative fund balance for their transportation accounts. Abington typically is deducted $400,000 to $600,000 from our June subsidy payment to pay the IU for provided transportation expenses. However, this situation has come to light in the past several weeks, and the deduction was 2.5 to 3 times the usual deduction. Based on recent information provided by the MCIU, the recovery program may continue into next year, and there may be additional catch-up payments. Since this amount is unknown for next year's MCIU transportation recovery, we are adding $900,000 as a contingency to manage the situation in the 24-25 budget. So comparing the final general fund budget of 24-25 to the 23-24 final general fund budget, local revenue is increasing $6.8 million to $138.4 million. State revenue is increasing $4.4 million to $47 million. Federal revenue again decreases $1 million to $2.9 million. Fund balance decreases to $9.2 million, and total revenue is $197.6 million. Salaries are at $96.2 million. Negotiated benefits are at $18.2 million. Mandated benefits are at $40.7 million. Non-salary, non-benefits are at $42.3 million. Operating expenses are $197.6 million, with an other financial contingency of $1.9 million, bringing the total operating expense and financing uses to $199.5 million, with an ending fund balance of $4.3 million. This slide shows the impact on raising the millage rate to 37.07%. A typical homeowner with an assessment of $141,130 see an increase of $262.50. But because the homestead is increasing from $426 to $494, this property would see an increase of $194.50, which is a 4.28% increase. The bottom portion of the slide shows the impact on seniors who qualify for the Abington School District rebate program. The first 2 income levels would not see a tax increase, and seniors in the bottom 2 income levels would see a tax increase of $10.50 to $42.50. So this slide shows what this budget is providing. There is $75.2 million for a high-quality, comprehensive K-12 general education and special education instruction programs. There is $2.5 million for charter school tuition. There's $2.9 million for plant services and transportation services, maintenance and repairs. There's $1.1 million for plant services and student transportation equipment and vehicles, including capital lease programs. The Abington School District transports students to 75 private schools. And there's $11.4 million of principal and interest for general obligation bonds, debt service that was borrowed to build a new and renovate schools and to perform the GISA projects. And so this is our forecast for the ending of the 23-24 school year. We are estimating that allocated fund balance needed for the 23-24 school year is going to be $5 million. If this is the case, the beginning fund balance for 24-25 would be $2.2 million, and then the ending fund balance for the 24-25 school year would be $11 million.
22. 22, not 2.2.
22.2 million.
Yep.
Sorry. $22.2 million would be the beginning fund balance, and the ending fund balance would be $11 million. And Dr. Fetcher, that concludes the presentation, and we can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board?
Can I ask a question about how the estimated allocated fund balance compares with what we used last year?
Last year was usage was $3.4 million.
Okay.
This $5 million takes into account the $1.4 million deduction from the MCIU. We weren't prepared for. We weren't notified about until May.
Okay, so if we pull that out, we'd be roughly even with what we were last year.
Correct.
Okay.
And we also had assessment payments that we made in June for the pavilion.
Okay. That's actually pretty impressive given the rate of inflation and the increase in other items in the budget.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board?
That number, I just want to clarify, that number also includes the increase in healthcare costs, correct?
CPAS,
CPAS?
I believe so, yes.
Yeah.
1.3 million.
For the reserve that was
Per month.
needed to be met, correct?
Yes.
Can I just make one more comment? Okay. So thank you for calculating the sort of compounded impact over time to those years when there was a 0% tax increase, because that's an important thing, I feel like, for members of the community to understand as we're struggling to provide students in this district with a quality education while the district is facing the same inflationary pressures households are facing. So when there are years where we have zero tax increases, that compounds over time, and it puts us in a more difficult position should we face economic headwinds, as we are now.
Correct.
Okay.
It also, one thing I would add as well is fixed expenses that have a fixed increase for example, from any contracts that we hold that have an increase in terms of fuel increases that occur, that when you have a zero increase, it's not taking into account those, predictions of what we know will be coming.
Any additional questions or comments?
I want to make one other comment.
Of course.
Sorry, I'm not trying to dominate. So I understand that the tax increase the district is proposing seems crazy high to some people. And I'm a single income household. I don't love the impact it's going to have on my household budget. What I do love is that even though my kids are out of the district, kids who are coming up now and in the future will have access to the same quality education by continuing to fund the district in this manner. Public education is not, nor has it ever been, a fee for service, right? We don't get to take a pass whether we have kids in the district or not. So I, for one, am happy to support this.
Thank you. I know it has been said already. Dr. Melissa said it quite well, Dr. Mowry. But I do appreciate the last slide, which shows where the money is going. And that's very important to indicate. I also appreciate the summaries showing that we have increased our spending by $2.1 million, but we can see where it's going. So I do appreciate that. And I am also in favor of voting yes for this budget proposal. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Thank you so much for the orientation. Dr. Fetcher, does that conclude our orientations for this evening?
Yes, Ms. Brown.
We will move forward with comments from citizens. Agenda item number 4. Comments from citizens are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comment is 267-715-3717 and is featured on the screen at this time. You will be able to join in using your mobile or landline phone. If you are within the building, there are mics to the left and to the right of you. Please be sure to state your name and address. Mr. Sneed, please let me know what is enough time to make sure that our callers have time to call in.
Got about 45 seconds.
Thank you so much.
There are no callers on the line.
Thank you. We will move forward with agenda item number 6. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the personnel agenda?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the changes in personnel as reflected in Personnel Addenda number 6.1 and 6.1A and Confidential Addendum number 6.1B.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. The personnel addendum begins with the assignment change for 1 administrative staff member, request for leaves of absence for 5 professional employees, the appointment of 2 professional staff members, and rehire 5 current long-term substitutes for the 2024-2025 school year. The personnel addendum continues with compensation for culminating ceremonies, IEP meetings, induction program, interpreter and translation services, and support and auxiliary staff items. I would like to take this moment to bring your attention to the retirement of Miss Ellen Brown, a kindergarten teacher at Overlook Elementary School who has served the district for 36 years. Lastly, please note in item number 6, which provides me with the authorization to hire and accept resignations, including retirements, professional and support personnel in accordance with the staff allocations and financial provisions of the 2024-25 budget. The names of the individuals hired will be presented for retroactive approval at the next board meeting. Item number 7 provides me with the authorization to create new positions and hire professional and support personnel in accordance with federal and grant program funding. The positions and names will be presented at the next board meeting for retroactive approval. Essentially, this allows us to continue to make sure that we're fully staffed as we do not have board meetings in July.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from the board? As always, we want to recognize our staff members who are retiring. 36 years is a lot of time. Thank you so much for your service, and we wish you the best chapter to be your next chapter. Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the financial report?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the financial report for the period ending May 31st, 2024, as reflected in Addendum number 7.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I'm going to ask Mr. O'Neill to please summarize the May 2024 financial report.
Thank you, Dr. Fetcher. Financial report for the period ending May 31st, 2024. Revenue. As of May 2024, the district received $167.5 million of the $178.1 million revenue budget, which equates to 94% of the revenue budget. In May 2023, the district collected $156.6 million of the then $168.5 million budget, which equates to 92.9%. Year-to-date, we are $10.9 million ahead of last year, which is attributable to greater real estate tax collections, greater interest earnings, and an increase in the basic education subsidy than in May of 2023. On the expense side, year-to-date, we have expended $155.6 million of our $189.9 million expense budget, which equates to 81.9%. For the same time period last year, $149.6 million was expended of the then $180.9 million budget, which equates to 82.7%. This concludes the May 31st, 2024 financial report.
Thank you. We can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Seeing that there are none, Mrs. Flanagan.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the payment of bills?
It is a recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the payment of bills for the period ending May 31st, 2024, as reflected in addendum number 8.1.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I would be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding the payment of bills.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for permits for the use of buildings and grounds?
It is a recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the applications for permits for use of buildings and grounds as reflected in addendum number 9.1. All permits are subject to change per the provisions of the Health and Safety Plan pertaining to the COVID-19 pandemic.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The permit addendum continues to reflect requests for buildings and grounds for meetings and other school events and activities for this time of year.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? I do like to thank the staff, community members who helped to put these things together. It really does create a sense of community for our students and helps to increase a sense of belonging. So thank you for all that you do. Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye. Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for advertisement for bids?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the advertisement for bids as reflected in addendum number 10.1.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. This evening, we have one request for permission to advertise, and this is for playground renovations for the Abington School District elementary schools. And this would be funded through our Series 2024 General Obligation Bond.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Can you speak to the, with this advertisement for bids, whether it includes the inclusive playground equipment that's not just needed to meet disability standards, but also for students to have access to enjoy the equipment?
Yes, Ms. Brown, as we have over the past few years worked with Architera to design, we have met with parent groups and community groups as well to look at accessibility and to ensure that the design has proper accessibility for our students and try to expand the offerings within the playgrounds as well for all students.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for awards of contracts?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the awards of contracts as reflected in addendum number 11.1.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. Tonight, for your consideration, we have 4 awards of contract. First is for desktop computers, and this is for areas that have desktops like administrative assistants and our nurses' suites as well. And it would be from the 2024-25 proposed general fund budget. Natural gas basis pricing, and tennis court repairs, student data, school business, and human resource management system as well.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed,
Aye.
Ms. Fazy,
Aye.
Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown.
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendations in agenda items 12.1 and 12.2 for the adoption of the 2024-2025 final general fund budget?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors adopts the general fund budget of the Abington School District for the 2024-2025 school year in the amount of $199,557,496 as reflected in addendum number 12.1. Action was taken to adopt and make available for public inspection the proposed final general fund budget May 14, 2024, as required by Act 1 of 2006. Public budget presentations were made on the following dates. Initial draft general fund budget on January 23, 2024. Budget update on February 13, 2024. Budget update on February 27, 2024. Budget update on April 16, 2024, and budget update on May 28, 2024. It is also the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorizes the appropriate expenditures of the funds as itemized in the final budget during the fiscal year beginning the first day of July 2024, that the necessary revenue for the same shall be provided by a real estate transfer tax of 0.5% and by a tax of 37.07 mils on the dollar amount on the total amount of assessed value of all property taxable for school purposes in the Abington School District, or at the rate of 3.707 on each $100 of assessed value taxable property, and by an earned income tax of 0.5% on residents of Abington School District.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. During our orientation this evening, we presented the recommended 2024-25 final general fund budget. Mr. Vittoria and I can answer any additional questions that you may have at this time.
Questions or comments from the board? I will say this. I do appreciate the information that was brought about, especially what would have happened if there was a tax increase in the past. Looking back at the history of there being tax increases or not tax increases, I did sit on the board where we passed 2 years, I believe, where there was no tax increase, and that was during the pandemic. And that was an incredible hardship for many people who live in Abington and beyond Abington. I don't take for granted that those hardships still do exist. But I also know that moving forward, we're not just responsible for the budget for next year. We are responsible for the impact that it has over the course of time, and making sure if there is an event of an emergency that we have the funds to cover that emergency and do not do further damage to our budget in the event of the emergency. With that being said, my vote will be yes, and I open the floor if there are any additional questions or comments. Ms. Flanagan?
Well,
I'm sorry, there's a comment.
well, the other comment I want to make on the taxes is that I've lived in the township for a while, for 28 years, and I remember when they were building Copper Beach and there was a proposal, there wasn't an increase. Well, I mean, of course, somebody likes an increase in taxes. I know I don't. But it was like, I could see a reason for it. Okay, this was a large outlay of funds. So sometimes, like you were saying, the pandemic was a good reason not to raise it. And then maybe some years we don't, maybe we could, or maybe we shouldn't. But I just think as long as the public can see a need and a reason for it, it's not so painful.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board?
One other comment on some of the increases that were outlined tonight. Two of them stood out to me personally. One was significant increases when it came to access for our staff to health care, necessary and needed. And some of that is because of things that are well out of control to this board specifically. I think maintaining access to health care is a fundamental right that we should always look to support our staff and having an understanding that there's additional costs that are exceeding above and beyond what is predictable, to our district. And the other area was special education. I think we looked at an increase of funds of 1.5 million this year. Again, this is an area that's necessary and needed for the students that we serve in this community. And that's also something that is disproportionately affecting our county locally outside of this district. Both of those areas are things that shouldn't be looked at lightly, and I am happy to have a yes vote on this as well, to continue to serve in those specific examples for our community.
If I may, public education is very, very, very expensive. Everything in this society has become very, very, very expensive. One area that we saw jump 800% since the 2009-2010 school year is our contribution to the public employee retirement system. And so we're talking about, we celebrate those who retire from Abington at every meeting. And we have members of our community who were made a promise when they signed on to work for the state of Pennsylvania. And we have been given a larger portion of the bill to fulfill that promise. If you just going back a little more than a decade, a much larger portion. And so all of these things that are coming up on this dais that have come up in several meetings, they contribute to the increases. And like President Brown said, unless we keep up with those increases, we continue going down the road of deficit spending. And we are trying very hard to pull out of that. And so we continue to thank the members of the community for the sacrifice that you all make for the benefit of our children. Right? This institution serves a majority of the young people within this township and within Rockledge Borough, and we have to pay for that. And I look forward to voting yes and continuing to support the children of Abington.
Just wanted to make a comment in regard to Ms. Eisenhardt's observation about special education. To put it into context, I know that you have asked questions about where do we fall, where does the county fall in terms of special ed services in the state. And between 2019 and 2023, Montgomery County saw a 5% increase. Across the state of Pennsylvania, 5.5% increase. And in Montgomery County alone, the average cost to provide services to children with special needs has increased 10% in the past 3 years. So I just wanted to, I know you've been asking that question and concerned, is this something that is Abington School District specific? And I think it's important for us to look at where we are and look at where the county is and also the state.
And would it be, this might be an assumption, so correct me, but said funding is not following that 10% increase. Would that be correct? Like the funding model that we follow for special ed within the state and county?
Yes, that's correct.
Thanks.
Any additional questions or comments from the board?
Yeah, I have another question. I might have overlooked it or whatever, but under 12.2, it says that revenue, the real estate transfer tax of 0.5%. Is that an increase or that's just what it's going to be? That's just what it is? Okay. All right. That's it.
Any additional questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhardt?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for approval of the food services contract?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors enters into a contract with Chartwell School Dining Services for the 2024-2025 school year at a guarantee of $200,430 to the district, contingent upon budgeted operating days, student enrollment, and budgeted operating cost.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. We are recommending that we enter into a contract with Chartwell's School Dining Services for the 2024-2025 school year. Chartwell's School Dining Services has provided contracted food services to the Abington School District since 1984. And this recommendation will provide a new contract for 1 year of service with the option to renew on an annual basis for 4 more years after the 2024-25 school year. Dr. Melchor, I'm going to ask you to expand on that.
Sure. Thank you, Dr. Fetcher. We went through a request for proposal process as required by PDE in order to get to this point of a recommendation, and we're pleased to have a few members of the Chartwell's team with us. We will be having a new Director of Dining Services in Abington School District for next school year. We were sad to see Ms. Armstrong leave, but we are pleased to have Ms. Chanel Traylor joining us. Just ask her to stand up. Ms. Traylor has experience in dining services in other school districts, currently in Orange, New Jersey as Director of Operations, and we are pleased to have her join us. Also representing Chartwell's Mr. Tom Boyu, who is the current area director overseeing Chartwell's operations in this area, and he is going to be replaced by Ms. Diana Cook, who will be the new area director supporting Abington as well as other districts that use Chartwell's food service. So new team, new members of the team for next school year, but we're pleased to have Chartwell's continue to provide excellent service for Abington School District.
Yeah, and I want to comment too in terms of I have been very pleased with Chartwell's in terms of their receiving of feedback from not only the administration but also from our students, and they have an opportunity to work with our students. As many of you know, I have a student advisory council, and Chartwell's often will come into the Student Advisory Council, listen to our students, and get their feedback. Cheesy breadsticks are still the favorite among K-12 in Abington School District, as well as the Fetcher household. So I couldn't be more pleased with the way that Chartwell's has worked with us, and when there are issues, we work together, and it is an extension of the Abington School District family. And I've been extremely pleased over my years of working with Chartwell's.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? The one comment / question I had was to share what opportunities does Chartwell have to connect with students, PTO, PTA members, and to get that feedback. So thank you for being prepared to speak to that.
And to expand on that, every school has a food service committee with students for feedback. So every building has that, and I know that the directors often visit and speak to the students and get that feedback, and parents are involved as well.
Thank you. Thank you for your services. Mrs. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Congratulations and welcome aboard to the newly appointed staff members of Chartwell's. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for authorization to enter into construction contracts?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorizes the Superintendent of Schools to enter into construction contracts at a value per contract not to exceed $80,000 until the next board meeting.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. This item also allows us to continue our work during the month of July before our next board meeting, and gives authorization to me as the superintendent to enter into contracts, construction contracts, with the limit not to exceed $80,000 during the summer, and they will be submitted to the board for review and confirmation at the next board meeting in August.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad,
Aye.
Ms. Fazy, Aye. Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye. Ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for authorization of construction change directives?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorizes the Superintendent of Schools to issue construction change directives at a value per contract not to exceed $20,000 until the next board meeting.
second,
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
As in the previous item, this is an annual request to give authorization to issue construction change directives throughout the summer until the next board meeting.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad,
Aye.
Ms. Fazy, Aye. Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye. Ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the classification of fund balances?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorizes the estimated dollar amounts for the classification of fund balances in the General Fund and Capital Projects Fund, with the final fund balance dollar amount being determined in concert with the local independent auditor's preparation of the audited annual financial report as reflected in addendum number 15.1, and authorizes the Chief Financial Officer to delineate estimated dollar amounts for the fund balance of the Special Revenue Fund, with the final fund balance amounts being determined in concert with the local independent auditor's preparation of the audited annual financial report.
second,
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I'm going to ask Mr. Vittori to please review the GASB 54 fund balance classifications.
So board policy and the superintendent's administrative procedure, Government Accounting Standard Board Statement number 54, requires that governmental funds known as fund balance be classified on a hierarchy of constraints that designate the use of fund balances for specific purposes. This resolution delineates the classifications of fund balances for the general fund and capital fund projects by the board of directors and delegates the responsibility of the chief financial officer to determine the final amounts of the district's auditors. Please know that addendum number 15.1 pertains to the 23-24 school year. The estimated general fund balance is $22.6 million and represents the use of roughly $5.1 million of the $11.8 million fund balance allocated for the 23-24 school year. Committed fund balance consists of $21.8 million for future capital projects, assessment, appeal, litigation, stabilization of employee benefits, and contingencies for transportation CPAS expenditures. The capital project fund balance accounts for $5.5 million of Series A 2017A bond proceeds, which are dedicated to the Abington Senior High additions and renovation projects, $448,000 for ongoing minor technology and HVAC projects, and $14.07 million, which is the proceeds from the Series 2024 General Fund obligation bonds. Fund balance classifications are based on estimates, with the final fund balance dollars amounts being determined in concert with the local independent auditor's preparation of our audited annual financial report.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier,
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart,
Aye.
Dr. Mowry,
Aye.
Ms. Spalding,
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad,
Aye.
Ms. Fazy, Aye. Ms. Hartman,
Aye.
Mrs. Brown,
Aye. Ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the Taxpayer Relief Act?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors establishes the following homestead exclusion and farmstead exclusion for the 24-25 fiscal year in that all eligible homesteads and eligible farmsteads shall receive a homestead and/or farmstead exclusion of $13,329 of the assessed value of the homestead and/or farmstead, which, based upon millage rate established for the 2024-2025 fiscal year, corresponds to a tax reduction of $494. Furthermore, the tax collectors shall itemize the exclusion on each eligible homestead and eligible farmstead owner's annual property tax bill, showing the assessed value, the tax liability on the assessed value, the amount of the homestead and/or farmstead exclusion in assessed value, the actual tax liability after the homestead and/or farmstead exclusion, and the actual tax savings associated with the homestead and/or farmstead exclusion. Additionally, the tax collectors shall have the following notice included with the annual property tax bills in July 2024 of all owners of eligible homestead and/or farmstead properties and not included with interim tax bills. Notice of property tax relief. Your enclosed tax bill includes a tax reduction for your homestead and/or farmstead property. As an eligible homestead and/or farmstead property owner, you have received tax relief through a homestead and/or farmstead exclusion, which has been provided under the Pennsylvania Taxpayer Relief Act, a law passed by the Pennsylvania General Assembly designed to reduce your property taxes.
Second. We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The recommended action is very detailed this evening, and this resolution essentially establishes the homestead and farmstead exclusions for the 2024-2025 school year. Mr. Vittoria and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Flanagan.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the real estate transfer tax? Pardon me.
Charge to tax collectors.
Charge to tax collectors. I apologize.
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the charge to tax collectors J.W. Blumenthal of Abington Township and Albert Wortman of the Borough of Rockledge as reflected in addendum number 17.1.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. I'm going to ask Mr. Vittoria to please review this item.
The charge to the tax collector is required by law to generate revenue in support of the expense budget for the operation of the school district. The addendum consists of 2 pages, which has specific directions for each of the school district's tax collectors for Abington Township and the Borough of Rockledge.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Flanagan.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the real estate transfer tax?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors record officially in the minutes the provisions of Section 4 of the Act of Assembly of December 31st, 1956, PL 1257, known and cited as the Local Tax Enabling Act, as amended by Act Number 160 of October 9th, 1967, which provides every such tax shall continue in force on a calendar or fiscal year basis, as the case may be, without annual reenactment, unless the rate of the tax is subsequently changed. The terms, conditions, and provisions of the Abington School District Real Estate Transfer Tax Resolution were duly approved and adopted on May 27, 1968, and amended on June 24, 1986, January 13, 1987, and June 26, 2007.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. This resolution is required by law to generate the revenue to support the expense budget recommended for your approval on agenda item number 12.1, which is the adoption of the 2024-2025 final general fund budget.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan.
Ms. Frazier?
Aye. Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the Senior Citizens Real Estate Tax Rebate Program?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the attached resolution to establish a senior citizen real estate tax rebate program as reflected in addendum number 19.1.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fletcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The formal resolution establishes a 40% rebate program in conjunction with the Pennsylvania Department of Revenue Real Estate Tax Rebate Program.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? I am pleased that we do offer this. If my memory serves me correctly, prior to the 40%, it was a 25%
Yes.
rebate, and we increased that over the last few years to help provide relief for our most vulnerable citizens, being our senior citizens. So I will vote in favor of this. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy? Aye. Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for federal grant applications?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorize the Office of the Superintendent of Schools at no additional compensation to file applications for the 2024-2025 federal grant funds for Title I, Title II, Title III, and Title IV funds in accordance with the procedures administered through the Pennsylvania Department of Education, Division of Federal Grant Programs.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. For the 2024-2025 school year, the PDE has released information for our federal program grant funds, as you heard, for Titles 1, 2, 3, and 4. These grants are part of funds supported through the federal legislation known as Every Student Succeeds Act, or ESSA. And this recommended action is to be able to file those applications. Dr. Butts and I will be happy to answer any questions that you may have regarding these title funds.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Feasy? Aye. Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the proposed academic program changes?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the academic program changes proposed for grades 6 to 12 as reflected in addendum number 21.1 and authorizes the publishing of the Abington Middle School Program of Studies 2024-2025 for grades 6 through 8 and the Abington Senior High School Program of Studies 2024-2025 for grades 9 through 12 as the official statements of the programs of study for grades 6 through 12. The board approves the courses listed with the understanding that scheduling of courses is subject to sufficient enrollment and adequate budgetary provisions.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. The academic program changes were reviewed and discussed under the board orientation this evening. We will be happy to answer any additional questions that you may have.
Questions or comments from the board?
Just a comment. Just wanted to thank the administration and Dr. Fetcher for expediting this so quickly in response to what our students need. And I look forward to seeing how this is, rolled out through the fall.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board?
I also want to say thank you to the administration, Dr. Fetcher, for just the turnaround on doing this. I know that that's a big and heavy lift to go ahead and do this, but a very necessary one. It might not be it might be a situation where we're building the plane as we fly it, but I appreciate it. And I appreciate the willingness to go ahead and take that on so quickly.
We will be completing a review of these changes to see the impact of them at the end of the year. Typically, it takes 2 to 3 years to realize an impact on changes. However, we're just going to see at the end of this next school year whether or not this had any slight impact in achievement, but also in growth, as I had mentioned earlier.
Mm-hmm. And I would just like to iterate that setting a goal so that there's something to reach for. Yes, we do want to see growth. Yes, we hope to also see increases in achievement, but to have a goal so that we can say we have met that, I think is very important as well.
I wanted to second that sentiment, that I do think having a goal here is critical to getting this program underway. It's, in my estimation, about 2 years overdue. We have been seeing flagging ELA scores for a couple of cycles now, so I'm glad that Dr. Fetcher has decided to intervene at this point.
In terms of the goals,
Yes.
as you know, each of our schools has a school improvement plan, regardless of how they are performing. Within the secondary buildings, the ELA program will be part of their school improvement plan, which will have specific goals to meet and the steps to meet those goals.
Excellent. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Mohammed, can you please read the recommendation for the Abington Cyber Education Program?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorize the administration to enter into a one-year agreement with the Chester County Intermediate Unit for full-service online courses with computer and textbook management through Brandywine Virtual Academy, provided that the services meet the district academic requirements.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. We wish to continue our online cyber education program, or ACE, for Abington School District students. This program also is important to note, meets Abington School District's academic expectations, and I believe better serves our students than other cyber options.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? I do appreciate that we continue to offer this as an option, and I know that when the students do finish their programming, they receive an Abington School District certificate or diploma. Thank you so much for helping me with that. Can you clarify whether they walk during graduation day?
Yes.
Excellent.
They are invited to walk.
Excellent. Okay. If there aren't any additional questions or comments? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mallory?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and so ordered. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the resource officer agreement?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorize the administration to enter into an agreement with Abington Township Police Department for school resource officer services based upon the rates and fees set forth in the agreement.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mr. Brown. This resolution is to continue our agreement with Abington Township Police Department for 2 school resource officers. I'm going to ask Dr. Melchor to please review the agreement.
Thank you, Dr. Fetcher. The school district pays for 75% of the services of one of the school resource officers, with the other 25% contributed by Abington Township, as well as the township paying for the full cost of the second resource officer.
Thank you, Dr. Melchor. We can answer any questions that you may have.
Questions or comments from the board?
I know that often the board asks in terms of what types of professional development are continued with the.
I was going to say, no, considering that this year, specifically this year, this is a very sensitive topic. And one thing that I think needs to be very clear is what changes are going to be made as a result of what we experienced this year, including training, including we push for positive relationships, and we know reaching children, whether you are a teacher, an aide, or a school resource officer, building those relationships is very important, but also boundaries is very important. So can you speak to what is different in light of what we experienced this year moving forward, and also speak to the training that our SRO officers receive?
Okay. I'm going to provide some of that. I'm going to ask Dr. Melchor to continue with it, but essentially our SROs will participate in professional development provided by the school district. Some of the topics are trauma-informed practices, cultural responsiveness, child abuse, and Title IX. They also participate in trainings that are required to be an SRO within to operate as an SRO within a school district. Dr. Melchor, can you expand on that a little bit?
All school resource officers are required to complete a 40-hour school resource officer training to serve in that capacity. Security guards, as well as our school police officers, also complete that training. Dr. Fetcher mentioned some of the other trainings that will occur this summer and into the school year. All of our security personnel, school police officers, school resource officers, security guards, also participate in trainings that are offered throughout the school year. You heard Dr. Rosenthal at the last board meeting reference trainings that will be occurring in November on trauma-informed practices. The SROs will participate in those as well.
Any additional questions or comments from fellow board members?
So one of the concerns we've heard from community members, both for our security guards, but also for the SROs, is that there was an unacceptable level of fraternization between people who are charged with the safety and security of our students and the students themselves. So it seems fair to ask, particularly at this meeting, how those relationships have, what kind of supervision will be afforded in order to keep those relationships appropriate. Specifically, sort of, the kinds of stuff we heard about was largely in the hallways, and so not necessarily involved with students going to an SRO's office.
Yes, so I would like to speak to that. We have met specifically with Abington Township Police to address the SRO and the oversight of SROs and an extra layer of supervision to ensure that we have more supervision from Abington Township Police Department. And also internally, we are looking at how we can add to that supervision as we do kind of an internal look at what occurred and what are ways that we can add prevention layers and measures within, our Abington School District employees as well. So that's one area that we are adding that supervision to speak to the security services, which is the next agenda item. In advance, we are ensuring that the same added, we're adding a layer there as well of having our Abington School District police officers who are Abington School District employees work in conjunction with the security service to oversee that security service, not just the supervision provided by the security service.
So can the board and the community expect an update once the district has identified what measures, I guess, internal to buildings will be taken to make sure that there's adequate supervision?
Yes, we are currently going to commence on an internal investigation to that.
Okay.
And that's done by an outside person, and we will take any of the things into consideration to improve the situation or to improve oversight, especially if we find that there were flaws in the system or how we had it created. So that's another layer that we're trying to take a look at. What can we do to further solidify supervision? And I believe that as we look at what had occurred and also look at different scenarios, that we will be provided with recommendations for improvement.
Okay, great, thanks. I look forward to hearing those.
Within your list of PD titles and subjects and modules, you mentioned Title IX. And although I know what Title IX is, can you just share? Everything else had a title. People can kind of know what it is. Can you speak to Title IX?
I asked Mr. O'Donoghue to review that.
Am I on now? Okay. Title IX is a federal law that prohibits gender-based discrimination in federally assisted programs, including education. It applies not only to sexual harassment and similar type offenses, but also to gender-based discrimination. So a hostile environment, all of those things. For claims of harassment, it contains a soon-to-be effective, revised, detailed framework for investigations that must take place. But for it does require investigations in other contexts. It just doesn't require the same procedural requirements that are required for the sexual harassment context.
Thank you for the clarification. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Thank you. Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the school security services agreement?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorizes the administration to enter into an agreement with Cardinal Point Homeland Security Group, LLC, for school security service based upon the rates and fees set forth in the agreement.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. This agreement is for a new security company to serve both secondary buildings. Dr. Melchor and I can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? This feeds off a previous comment. I believe it was a question made by Dr. Mowry in regard to the relationship between security officers in the hallway and students. And I think it's worth mentioning that we want to make sure that this company understands the level of professional development that the security personnel needs to be held accountable to. And also, can you speak to the age of the security personnel that would be servicing our district?
Dr. Melchor, did they have an average?
The average age is 25.
Okay. Thank you so much. I think that does make a difference. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and so ordered.
Mrs. Brown, may I
Yes,
just make
sir.
one clarification?
Yes.
The age reference that you were making was ensuring that the employees were sufficiently older than the people they were supervising or providing security for, and not meant to indicate a preference for younger security guards, correct? I just want to clarify that.
Yes, yes, and since we just spoke about Title IX, this is not an age discrimination comment. This is making sure that the people who are servicing our students have developed at a mental capacity where science research tells us that at 23 is when their frontal. I'll stop. I would just want to make sure they're older and they're
Just
not
making sure
19.
We weren't
That's it.
asking for individuals
No.
below the age of 40 or anything like that. I
No.
just wanted to clarify that for everyone.
Correct.
When I hear age, that's where my brain goes.
Yes, yes. Well aware of Title IX, and we will not discriminate, but we do want to learn from our mistakes. Thank you for that. I will need help in knowing where I stopped. Item 25. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the MCIU lease agreements?
It is a recommended action that the Board of School Directors authorizes the administration to enter into an agreement for the operation of early intervention, Head Start, and pre-K counts preschool programs with the Montgomery County Intermediate Unit for the 2024-2025 school year, with the cost for the facility to the MCIU at $16,023 plus related expenses.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. This resolution will authorize the administration to enter into a lease agreement with the MCIU for the operations of 3 classrooms. And they're for Head Start and pre-K counts, preschool programs for next school year. They are serviced in this building, and we are happy to have our smiling children in the administration building, learning and reminding us of our purpose.
Thank you. Questions or comments from the board? Mrs. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Muhammad?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for the first reading of the members and terms of office policy?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors approves the first reading of the board policy entitled Members and Terms of Office Policy as reflected in addendum number 26.1.
Second.
We have a second. Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. The Board of School Directors has requested that we explore having a student school board member, and this is the start of that request, which would take a look at our policy. We would need 2 readings of our policy. And Dr. Melchor, could you please review any, what this would entail?
Sure. So as you see in the shaded language, this is the recommended addition to the policy, appointing a student to serve as a non-voting member of the board, having the right to attend public board meetings and the opportunity to ask questions and provide comment. Since this is a substantive change to policy, as Dr. Fetcher mentioned, this will require a second read, which will occur at the first August meeting, and then in conjunction, we will develop a superintendent's administrative procedure that will identify the process for implementing this policy.
I hate to do this.
We
I do it
we
too
have
much.
feedback. I'm imagining grammatically in nature. Okay.
Correct. The second sentence, after and before opportunity, requires the in order to have appropriate parallelism.
Okay.
That's my only comment.
Thank you. Any additional questions or comments from the board?
We will ensure that the
change is made. Yes.
is added prior to the second reading.
Yes.
The definite article.
Definite article, yes.
Yes. In addition to this, I want to thank Dr. Fetcher for meeting with students on a regular basis, taking their feedback, and helping them to know that they are positive change agents, and you create the space for that. I know that is also done at the building level with our administrators. You meet with students on a regular basis to get their feedback so that there can be positive change in the building. I think this adds an extra layer to it, and I am proud that it is being considered that a student representative can sit here, a non-voting member, but to provide their voice here at the board meeting as well. Any other questions or comments from the board? Ms. Flanagan?
Ms. Frazier?
Aye.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
Aye.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye, ayes have it, and motion passes. Mr. Muhammad, can you please read the recommendation for raising of the Progress Pride flag in June?
It is the recommended action that the Board of School Directors adopt the declaration below regarding the raising of the Progress Pride flag at all district facilities in the month of June. Abington School District endeavors to foster belonging through a culture of dignity in which members of our community feel validated, accepted, and treated fairly. The Board of School Directors views the Progress Pride flag as a symbol of inclusivity, acceptance, and welcoming. An explanation of the symbolism of each shape and color in the flag can be found at the link below. In furtherance of its effort to foster belonging, the Board of School Directors directs the administration to fly the Progress Pride flag below the United States flag at all district buildings annually during the month of June.
Second.
We have a second, Dr. Fetcher.
Thank you, Mrs. Brown. As you know, this item was added to the agenda at the board's request at our last board meeting, and I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Thank you so much. So I made this request for a number of reasons. One, it connects to, someone may ask, what does this have to do with educating students? And I believe it connects to students' sense of belonging. I recall data from our PSSM, our student surveys dating back to 21, 22, and I recall for the gender identification, the mean average for the fall and the mean average for the spring was not as high as our other subgroups. So what can we do to make sure that all students feel a sense of belonging here in our schools? I hold this as a gesture that says you are included here, you are welcome here, you are valued here. And if I can, I would like to read 2 paragraphs from what is linked on, for those of you who are accessing this digitally, there's a link attached to this item there. I'm reading under where it says why the pride flag is important. The pride flag serves as a symbol of the LGBTQIA+ community. It is a visual reminder of the struggles and oppression that people in the community have faced and continue to face, but it is also a sign of hope. And if you go down a bit further, it reads, the widespread use of the pride flag allows the LGBTQIA+ individuals to connect with each other and feel included regardless of their location. No matter where you are or how you identify, the rainbow's colors are meant to signify that you are included, welcome, and a safe part of the LGBTQA+ community. I would also like to say that you are welcome, included, and a safe part of the Abington School District community. And that is the reason why I asked for this to be an agenda item for this evening as a declaration of inclusivity and diversity within our district. With that being said, any questions or comments from the board?
I'd just like to say that that was beautifully put.
I agree that is beautifully put, and I strongly encourage, and I strongly encourage celebrating of all of our students, especially our students, LGBTQI+ students. My concern with a flag and putting a flag up is that if there were other flags proposed, would they also be put up?
This is a request of this board that the board is voting on. This isn't, you have not created a public forum for the community. You have created a place where the board, in this case, is doing something that it is tied to your policies and procedures on inclusivity, non-discrimination. So I don't believe that would be the case.
Okay, gotcha. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any additional questions or comments from the board?
In order for people to learn, young people to learn in any given space, they need to feel like they belong. They need to feel like they're safe. There are marginalized communities who question whether or not they belong and who question whether or not they are safe. And this is a gesture to those communities, to that community in particular, in saying you do belong and you are safe. And I look forward to voting for yes on this measure.
I personally don't think a flag is necessary. I think the only flag I want to see flying on a public building is a flag of the United States of America. We don't have to have a flag to let the children know that they are welcome, they are accepted. It's the response and the actions of the teachers, of the administrators, of how they are reacted to in school. That's what we need to do. Yes, we include them in everything. We show them our love, our support, and I think that's all that's necessary. All right, thank you.
Thank you for your voice, and I know it takes courage to state your truth and your beliefs. So I do not discount what you just offered up, and I thank you for that. I will include in my part of my comments is that representation does matter. And to have a flag may be a sense of representation for a group who may feel, I do not speak for all LGBTQI plus community members, but who may feel as though that there's a disconnect between their sense of belonging in school and their sense of belonging in other places. Any additional questions or comments from the board? Seeing that there are none, Mrs. Flanagan.
Ms. Frazier?
Abstain.
Ms. Eisenhart?
Aye.
Dr. Mowry?
Aye.
Ms. Spalding?
No.
Mr. Mohammed?
Aye.
Ms. Fazy?
Aye.
Ms. Hartman?
Aye.
Mrs. Brown?
Aye. Ayes have it and motion passes. Dr. Fetcher, are there any additional reports or recommendations by the administration this evening?
Not this evening.
Thank you. Any other reports or recommendations from my fellow board members? We will move now to agenda item number 30, which is comments from citizens. Comments from citizens are being conducted both in person and by phone. The phone number to participate in public comment is 267-715-3717 and is featured on the screen at this time. You may call in using your mobile or landline phone. There are also mics to the left and to the right of you within the building. If you would like to make a statement within the building, please be sure to state your name and address. And Mr. Sneed, I look for your guidance and how long to wait for the phone lines. Thank you.
40 seconds. There are no callers on the line.
Thank you so much for that. And noting that there are no speakers within the room, Dr. Fetcher, may I ask if you can speak to the comments that we have received via email?
Yes, prior to tonight's meeting, there were two individuals who were unable to make comment at the meeting. I forwarded their comments to you in regard to the pride flag.
Thank you. Thank you so much. And at this time, we will have closing comments from my fellow board members, starting with Ms. Frazier.
Have a safe and happy summer vacation to all of you.
Ms. Eisenhart.
Yeah, happy summer all, and looking forward to seeing you in August.
Dr. Mowry.
Have a safe, enjoyable summer. Read, and then read some more. I'll see you in August.
Ms. Spalding.
Have a good summer, and I do plan on doing plenty of reading. See everybody in August.
Mr. Muhammad.
So I would like to thank my parents and all of my teachers who helped me get through all of the reading tonight. No, you all have a great summer. I do actually have a book at home waiting for me. It just arrived. It was released today. Part 3 of a series that I'm looking forward to finishing.
I'll have to get that title from you.
Children of Virtue and Vengeance.
Okay.
It's very good.
Intriguing.
I apologize. Ms. Fazy.
Everyone have a great and happy and safe summer. See you in August.
Ms. Hartman.
Have an excellent summer, and we'll see you in August.
Dr. Fetcher.
I'd like to thank the Board of School Directors for a great school year. I'd like to thank our staff and administrators for a great school year and all the hard work that goes into that. And this is our culminating meeting for the year. However, the work will continue in the month of July with some breaks for us. But I want to just acknowledge the fact that, we have these meetings twice a month, and the cooperation and the work that goes into preparing for the meetings and the topics that you as the Board of School Directors have to ensure that you have enough knowledge to be able to vote appropriately on the topics is greatly appreciated. And I look out at my staff within this room, and I know that there's a lot of hard work that goes into that so that I can assist the Board of School Directors with that information. And I thank you for that. And it does not go unnoticed, the volume of things and the different type of items that we are faced with, to make sure that we just remember our purpose, and that's the children, and remember that, we want them all to achieve, and achievement comes in many formats. So I appreciate that. And as far as reading is concerned, I just want to remind my leadership team that you have a reading assignment that's due in August, and I look forward to discussing that with you.
Thank you. Sticking on reading, my book of choice for this summer is Unearthing Joy, a guide to culturally and historically responsive teaching and learning, written by Goldie Muhammad, and I hope I pronounced the first name correctly. But my book comes tomorrow, so I look forward to kicking up my feet and enjoying it. Everyone, thank you for your service. Have a great evening. This meeting is adjourned.